Good afternoon, all.
Hello, everybody.
Well, hello, everyone. I feel like you're looking at me from a really weird angle. I think I need to fix it.
It's like we're on the floor looking up at you.
Yeah, like, I don't think I have any boogers.
Yeah, no.
Tracy, do we have you this time? Every time we have.
Yeah, you do. I'm on another laptop. You can hear me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Well, welcome. It's good to hear. It's actually good to see you for a change. Usually we just get to hear you. Brian's here. Hello, Brian.
It's better-ish.
I love it, Jen. That's great.
I feel like you're
Hey, Jen.
almost at the same height now.
That's better. Yeah.
Okay, so Jen, if it makes you feel better, I have a crock sitting on my desk with a laptop up on it. Otherwise, I'd be looking from the same angle you are.
Oh, yeah?
So I've got everything kind of jacked up. So otherwise, that's the only reason it looks this way.
That's awesome. Oh, we're looking down on Brian. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not figuratively, obviously. But
No, we're just physically up higher.
Well, and then you got Steve, who's got his cool background going.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't experimented with the background thing.
You can put your logo behind you. I have my company logo sometimes that I put when I'm in an embarrassing location.
I have, like I said, I haven't experimented with that, so I got to figure that out.
I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to insinuate that you're in an embarrassing location. I'm sure you're not.
No. There's just nothing nice to look at behind me anyways, so I figured I'd put something nice up.
I like it.
Yeah.
Sophia, there's Philip. I'm waiting on 4 of us, so we've got 1, 2, 3.
And we'll be getting a logo next time.
Hey there.
So we got 4.
Hello.
All right, we got a quorum.
Cool.
That's a good sign. Looks like Brian just checked in. I think we're going to be okay. Who are we missing? Anybody? We got both Brians. All right, well, good. Well, let's start the meeting. It's 3:31. It's December 9th, 2020, the last month of this horrific year. And so we are so glad to be closing it out, I think is an understatement. But looks like we do not have any guests. Is that correct? ADQ or Sophia?
That is correct, sir. I do not see that we have any members of the public that have joined the meeting so far.
All right, well, I will dispense with the reading of the rules since we have no one. And again, the meeting is called to order. We do have a quorum, so it looks like everybody is present actually today, so that's good too.
I think only Stuart is the one that appears to be absent.
Who's that?
Stuart?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. We do have, Stuart is not in. So, okay. All right, so I have the agenda in front of me and now I don't. Hold on. I know I've got it somewhere. All right. All right. Well, let's just launch into the regular session. Do you want to dispense with the discussion on how the UDC Advisory Virtual Conference will be conducted?
I'll just give a quick update, reminder to everybody that when you're not speaking, to please mute your microphones. That way we avoid any sort of echo. And then again, if for whatever reason you do drop from the call or you start experiencing some technical issues, please give me a call. My number is 512-931-7686. That way we can make sure that we get you. We're able to stop the meeting and address whatever issues you may be running into and make sure that you're able to continue participating in the meeting. And that's it.
Can you repeat that phone number one more time for me so I can put it right here?
Absolutely. It is 512-931-7686. It is also in the chat box in case you need it. And we've also provided Ethan's phone number in case you cannot get a hold of me. You can also reach out to him and we'll get you sorted.
Okay, and then I'll also, I emailed ADQ earlier, I've got to step out at like 4 or 4:05. So if we're still going, Tracy, I'm going to appoint you as the chairman to close the meeting out, if that's okay. So I'm not even sure who my vice chairman is. If it's not you, I apologize to whoever is the vice chairman.
I think it's me.
All right. Well, you're it at roughly 4 o'clock. Anyway, let me go back to the agenda. Okay, so item B on the regular session, we don't have anybody open to signed up to speak, so we'll move on to the legislative regular agenda. Item C, consideration possible action to approve the minutes of November 11th, 2020 regular meetings of the UDC. Has everybody gotten it and or read it? That's crickets. Oh, thank you for posting that. I was on the other thing. All right.
I got the minutes, I read the minutes, and I moved to approve the minutes.
All right, we have a motion to approve. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second by Philip. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so approved. All right, item D, discussion and possible direction on the proposed amendments to the tree preservation landscape standards of the UDC, specifically as it relates to tree preservation, removal and mitigation, street yard, gateway and parking landscape standards, and screening and water conservation, UDC General Amendment number 20-03. Y'all have the floor.
All right, well, good afternoon, committee. I'll go ahead and get us started. And then just we've done it with the previous meeting. We'll tag team with the rest of the team. But really so the purpose of our today's meeting is honestly to hopefully be able to wrap up and culminate all the discussions on the terms that we've been having related to tree preservation and landscaping standards. And specifically, we're going to go ahead and conclude our discussion relating to street yard, gateways, and parking. There was one outstanding item related to the street yard requirements where you had given us some additional direction. And so we've come back, we've prepared some additional information, and we'll be presenting and going over that with you so that we can go ahead and validate those terms. And then also be able to validate the proposed terms that we have drafted for your consideration related to screening and water conservation, based again also on the direction and the feedback that you gave us from the last meeting. In addition to that, as an attachment to your agenda packet, we included a summary table sheet with all the terms on all the items that we have been discussing in the last 3 to 4 months. And so that third part of the meeting, we really want to consist more as you kind of like doing that one more double check, making sure that we've captured everything, that there's nothing that's missing. So we don't anticipate spending too much time on it. This is really more kind of like the opportunity for you to be able to let us know and say, yes, you've definitely captured our direction. You've captured the discussion. Go ahead and move forward and start drafting the ordinance. And then towards the end of today's conversation, we want to be able to go over with you kind of like our public outreach plan that we're anticipating to do next month in the month of January, gain some of your feedback and direction on that, and then be able to also ask you and see how we can partner in participating and making sure that we get the word out. And so as a reminder, as I mentioned, we are in those last stages in that closing out the conversations and the discussions that we've had on the different terms for the agreement so that we can go ahead and start gearing up to doing the public outreach effort, drafting the ordinance. And then we do plan on being able to present all of the terms that you and recommendations that you had given to us to the city council as a workshop item, just to kind of like say, this is what the work that we have been doing with the UDC Advisory Committee. These are the terms that we have been discussing and the recommendations that we have been discussing. Are we headed in the right direction? So we can finalize that ordinance and then come back to you for an actual recommendation and vote on those amendments. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Steve, and we'll get discussing on street yards. Steve, you're muted right now.
There we go. Like the option for unmuting went away. Okay, so we are pretty much going to cover, as Andrana said, only the sections that we needed to come back to you with some additional information on, as identified last time. One second while the screen's jumping around here. So the first one will be the street yard landscape requirements and thresholds that we had identified last time. There was some concern with the new thresholds and the requirements associated with those. So we went back and we took a look at those, ran the numbers again, and came back with some adjustments. Currently, our code has the three before you, the 50,000 or less than 50,000, 50,000 to 500,000, and then the 500,000 plus range. These have requirements for trees and shrubs, 1 per 5,000 square feet, 1 tree per 5,000 for the first 50,000, and then it jumps to 10 once you hit that 50,000 threshold, and 1 per additional 10,000 all the way up to 500,000, and then 55 starting at 500,000 with 1 per additional 25,000. The shrubs are 3 to 5,000 square feet. When it hits 50,000, it goes to 30 with 3 additional required every 10,000. And then at 500,000, it starts with 175, and then it's 3 per 25,000 square feet additional. Not sure if this is working. Is it delayed or? Okay. So what we did was went back and crunched the numbers and came up with a different requirement for the new thresholds that are being proposed. So the 10,000 or the up to 10,000 threshold is a 1 tree per 2,500 square feet and 3 shrubs per 2,500 square feet. Once it hits 10,000, it goes to 4 shrubs for the first 10,000 and 1.5 per additional 10,000 square feet. And then 12 shrubs for the first 10,000 with 4 per additional 10,000 beyond that. And then when it hits the final threshold, which would be 100,000 plus, we start with 18 trees, and it's 2 additional trees per 20,000 beyond that. And then it starts with 48 shrubs with 5 per additional 20,000 beyond that. These numbers felt to be a little more on par with both what we offer currently and what we see come in on projects that we kind of looked at in these general areas, these general ranges of street yard. So in the yellow and reddish hatching, those are the existing quantities. The green area would be the new proposed. On the far right, we are identifying the differences between the old and the new requirements. You'll see that in the tree category, it's generally around 1 to 2, depending on where it falls. That number has been rounded up because you obviously can't plant a half a tree. So anytime that 1.5 were to kick in, it automatically bumps it to a second tree, not just 1 tree or 1.5 trees. And then we're just showing pretty much the highlights here, the 2,500 all the way up to 100,000 with the next jump to 120,000. That's what we've identified here. You can see that, again, it's right around the 1 additional, 2 depending on the size of your street yard for the trees, And then the shrubs vary a little more, anywhere between 3 to 6, or possibly less than what you're currently requiring. That 50,000 threshold is where the shrubs actually drop below what we require currently. We did get a couple examples of projects that we've seen come in. These projects, we've shown the current requirement of 1 tree and 2 shrubs against the proposed requirements of 1 and 3 shrubs. In this particular project, this was along a gateway, so it had additional planting requirements. But as you can see, they had an on-site tree that they were able to save, as well as they were able to configure the site in the means to get 2 additional trees and all of their shrub requirements. So even though the site is a very small, or has a very small area, they were still able to meet the proposed requirements that our new ordinance would have. The next example is kind of that middle range street yard. Currently, this project was required to have 11 trees with 33 shrubs. The proposed, sorry if you guys can hear the dogs in the background. The proposed requirements would have been 12 trees and 32 shrubs with our new threshold requirement. I believe this site ended up having around 20 trees, and you can tell that there's quite a lot of shrubs along the front. So there was no problem with this. This was a gas station, I believe, and there was a considerable amount of impervious cover that they were just, dealing with at the time. Our next example is one that we used to represent the percentages and how those would work. But this was a great example of a project in the higher range. This was 136,000 square feet and had the current requirements of 19 and 54 shrubs. And with the new requirements, it would be 22 and 58 shrubs. I don't see there being any real issue with fitting these requirements in this particular site, but as you can see, this site was able to plant specifically what was required, and then they were able to satisfy the requirement, no problem. Let's see. So before we go on to the option 3 that we've already reviewed from last time, are there any concerns, questions from any of the committee members?
A couple of comments, I guess, I just want to make are that it looks like it is pretty much in line. Just as if you're talking calculation numbers, 1 tree can cost $700 or so to install, and a shrub can be $30 to $40 depending. So if you're looking at costs for the rest of the committee, that's what that means to that when they're adding some, and that's fine. And many times over, the street yard isn't completely the driving factor of meeting the requirements. A lot of times if there's parking up there, shrubs are planted for screening, and then those can count towards street yard as well. So those numbers that I think they proposed on the, or showing on this comparison aren't a big impact generally. So I think this is a good, this is a good comparison, helps us understand better.
And it doesn't appear to have a whole lot of economic impact with the change, right, to the landowner.
Right, it doesn't seem to.
I mean, it's not
And
a little bit more.
and oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say just a little bit more. It doesn't look like it's a big expense.
Yeah, it's not a big one, and sometimes it's probably negligible, is what I would guess. And then I guess the overall factor, if my understanding's right, is this is going to make it somewhat easier for the city as they in calculations. Or tell me again, is this driven by input from developers, or I know we're revamping it because you said it just kind of goes more in line with the different sizing of projects?
Yeah, so this was actually brought up by a developer who had a rather large street yard. So that's what got us looking at all of this. Overall, though, this will bring us more in line with a couple of other cities surrounding us. And this is more in line with the average size of street yard that we deal with regularly here in Georgetown. So we really don't have those huge 500,000 square foot street yards. So the need for that large of a threshold really wasn't there, which is why we kind of pushed and are hoping to get this new threshold in place.
Well,
And
thank
if
you.
I may add on to that, I mean, for those rare occasions where we may get that big of a street yard, which is the reason why we started looking at this, because of the concerns provided for that. As you reach those really higher levels, based on these calculations, you'll actually see that then the number of trees and shrubs that would be required will start actually being less than what we currently require today. And so it would be able to, by providing this new threshold, it'll be able to address those really big street yards and address the concerns that we have been hearing from some of those developers where, you know, it's just a lot of plaintiffs to be able to do in such a large area.
Yeah, so to add on to that, since we didn't attach the entire Excel sheet, you start to see the decrease in shrubs first. Generally, that's going to start coming into effect around the 180,000 range. But when it comes to the street yards and the trees, you'll start seeing an even change and then decrease right around the 360 square footage and beyond. So it does really address those much larger street yards and the burden of planting those that the developer would be taking on.
Yes. So
Thank you for doing this. This really helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you very much. So is that it? Comments?
So it sounds like we're good with this revised option 2.
Would appear that way.
Okay. All right. Ethan? Steve?
So then moving on, option 3, this has not changed. This is an option for projects coming in, but we are recommending that it requires requirement for phase projects and for the planting, the higher level planting to be included with the first phase. That way we don't end up with potential sections along roadways or within street yards that just are patchy and not filled in. We get a more uniform look for the overall development because we never know 100% guarantee that a phase project will actually come in and be completed or changed down the road type of thing. So again, this hasn't changed from our last discussion. It is an option for non-phase projects, but we are recommending that this be a requirement for phase projects, that the 60% planning is what goes in with phase 1. Are there any questions, or is everybody okay on this one?
So as an option for just standard developments, I mean, that's great having it an option. But if it is a phased development, I guess ultimately it would make a financial impact on the developer early on because they would be required to plan a little bit more up front. Is that correct?
That is correct, depending on the project that comes in. A lot of times what we see, for example, Cedro Crossing, you know, they had that large portion of their right of way that was planted with phase one, and there was only a small portion of it that for some reason was pieced out as a last phase almost in the project. So yes, there is a potential that it would cost more initially, depending on the project and the size of, obviously, of that street yard for that project.
Okay. I'm not against this at all. I think it's a good solution.
Okay, any other comments? Speak up now. If not, y'all are welcome to proceed.
All right. All right. So then we're actually going to jump to our water conservation portion of this. This was the other topic that needed a little recap and some more information provided. So the purpose of the water conservation, there we go. So the purpose of this was to obviously help with water conservation, but on a non-residential project. So right now we have a lot of this implemented for residential. Non-residential, there isn't a whole lot. Sorry, it's not. So our current terms for non-residential projects, grass areas are encouraged to be planted with drought-tolerant species. We require 50% of plant material to be low water users. We require sod to be used in swales greater than with a slope greater than 3 to 1, and in other areas that are subject to erosion. And then synthetic or artificial lawns are not allowed. In addition to exceeding their impervious cover. I guess that's the one thing that kind of isn't on there. But so the proposed terms that we had last time were to continue encouraging the grass areas to be planted with drought-resistant species. 2, to continue to require the 50% or possibly explore a higher percentage. What we ended up coming back with was we're going to continue with the 50%, but there was, at the last meeting, there was a request for incentivizing the use of additional low water or to increase that low water use of plant material on a project. So to do that, what we came up with was for every additional 10% of plants classified as water users in a project, an additional 1% of impervious cover up to a maximum of 3% may be granted on a project. This is pretty similar to an existing landscape impervious increase option that's available, but it will require some calculation actually being shown on the plans that 50% of the plant material being used is low water, that's a requirement, and then obviously showing us what additional percentage is being used. That way we can, give you either the 1, 2, or maximum of 3%.
I actually like that. I mean, that could be the difference in adding a parking space or something. I think that's.
Yeah, if I may add on to that for a little bit, some of you may be familiar that the UDC right now already provides from some waivers that you can apply for in order to be able to gain additional impervious cover. And so what this would provide would be just another option that you can use to be able to under those requirements and criteria. So it doesn't change the impervious cover limitations or it doesn't change the impervious cover processes or of obtaining waivers. It just adds an additional option that you can use in order to be able to gain that a little bit more impervious cover.
But you wouldn't be required to get a waiver to take advantage up to 3%, correct?
Correct. I mean, because all impervious covers right now, the way that we process them on the waivers is that it's part of the site plan review or part of your stormwater permit review. And so what you do is that here are the features that I am proposing to do, and that this is what I'm using to be able to gain that a little bit of additional impervious cover situation as approved by our development engineer.
All right. Okay.
All right. The third possible solution would be to continue required usage of sod in 3-to-1 and greater slopes. And then for all other areas, sod shall be limited to the remaining percentage of plant material that are not low water users. This is a little trickier, probably, just when you first read it to fully understand it. There will be some exemptions to this: dog parks, open recreational common areas, and parkland. Just because we don't necessarily want to see, those features going away just because they can't be planted to meet the remaining percentage. But our next slide kind of breaks down how this would work. So the current allowable turf area on the left really is anywhere. I mean, obviously where shrubs are going in, there won't be turf, but everywhere else, the turf is not restricted. On the right-hand side, the proposed allowable turf area would be set at a base of 50%. And then if you end up providing more low water plant material, then your area of grass, your allowable area of grass would also shrink at that point. So if you ended up hitting the 60% threshold and you were going for that 1% impervious cover, then you would only be allowed 40% of your overall landscapable area to be covered with turf. There are a couple specific breakdowns for the project that does need to be met. And then, we figure that the way it would work on a plan you'd identify your landscape area, 50% of landscape area for plant material, and then, what your low water plant material percentage would be, and then that would give you the remaining for your sod percentage. Are there any, hopefully it's clear as mud, I guess, but if you have questions, let me know. Concerns on it. This kind of took a little thought behind it between all of us, so.
I understand the concept, and so is this going to be a calculation, I guess, additional required on the landscape plan if we do this?
Correct.
And then I think it's fine. Now, one clarification. You're saying sod, but I think you mean turf, because I always sod as the squares, and hydromulch is the spray, but it's all for turf. So
Yeah.
we want to probably clarify that. But to achieve, I mean, the one I know that does this similar is City of Leander, I think. They have a 50% grass limit essentially for all projects that are non-residential.
Yeah, and a lot of the intent behind this too is to really start getting those low water use plants that have that ground cover effect. Instead of grass, you're only planting, a handful of ground covers that spread, 6 feet, 7 feet, things like that. So you're still getting that green cover. It's just not with the intense water using turf.
Yeah, that is a good water use. Turf is a good high water usage usually.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Maybe not. I see a lot of blank stares though.
I mean, this is a change, but it's for a goal to lower water usage, and I think that's a valid goal of the cities.
I agree. Tracy, I've got to run. I'm gonna leave it back to you. So, sorry, I hate to bug out, but I gotta go. Sorry, guys.
See you,
Thank you,
PJ.
DJ.
Bye,
Thanks.
PJ.
All right. Well, then I'll move on.
Okay.
So the fourth proposed term would be to allow artificial turf in areas screened from street and adjacent properties and in accordance with the impervious cover requirements of the project. Artificial turf shall be prohibited within required buffer yards and gateway landscape buffers. So this, we plan on including a standard that will define the preferred artificial turf and maintenance requirements. A lot of that is probably going to be collaborating with engineering to make sure that, you know, what we put out as the minimum requirements they're okay with. But that was it as far as the water conservation end of it.
Looks good.
Does look good.
Okay. All right. And so now we'll jump back to the screening requirements. Okay, here we go. All right, so this was pretty straightforward. This was really to consider establishing screening standards for other trash receptacles and to include location requirements. So our current terms just really speak to dumpsters or that dumpsters are subject to locational design standards, including distance from property line, placement of reinforced concrete pads, screening material, gate materials, and features to protect enclosures from truck operations. What we're proposing would be for other waste and recycling container enclosures, and that those shall be subject to dumpster location and design standards that we currently have. And then as well as the location of waste and recycle container enclosures shall also comply with the standards of the waste collection service provider, which we will also be working with to make sure that we have their standards. And then
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Are we good?
I was going to say, anybody have any comments? We're kind of
I think it
quiet.
looks good. You've done what we asked for previously, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that should wrap that up. Now we're on to part 3, which I will turn back over to Andrea.
Thank you, Steve. So yeah, so on part 3, you know, it's, as I mentioned, we're really referring more here to that attachment 2 that was included in your application packet, and I'll go ahead and show it here as well. But really, this is essentially, it's all the terms that we've been talking about and that we've been discussing, from all the way back from the tree preservation requirements to everything related to street yard gateways and parking, to everything that we just talked about related to screening and water conservation. And so our intent is not to go over them in detail, but just basically make sure that you have them available so that you can see together everything that we've been talking about, and really just ask you the question in terms of like, are we missing anything? Was there something, a conversation or a direction that you gave us that we completely missed? Are we forgetting something? Did we capture it right? Are we good do we have your green light to go ahead and start drafting the ordinance so that we can bring it back to you?
I think you've done a great job. I'm ready for you to start drafting the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been a good process.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Well, we as mentioned, we'll certainly going to be also presenting a summary of these terms based on all the direction, the feedback that you've given us. And we're going to check in with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, make sure that we haven't missed anything as well. And we'll certainly begin drafting the ordinance so that we can bring it back to you for your review and consideration of it. And so our next part for today's conversation is related to the public outreach. And so we have, our goal ultimately was to be able to get this ordinance adopted by March. And so in order for us to accomplish that, we need to go through that public outreach process, make sure that we get, once we've drafted the ordinance, that we can go ahead and share it with members of the public. We can share it with key community members and associations, and really just be able to have the ability to discuss them, gain their feedback, gain their input on it, and make sure that we've actually addressed the issues and that we're headed in the right direction. And so we are planning for to have that public review period for a couple of weeks at the end of January, starting right after the Martin Luther King holiday, where we do plan on sending out an email to various members of our community, as well as posting it online, and even including like a very quick survey, just asking very quick questions like, are we headed in the right direction? Did we actually answer the issue? Have we addressed the issue that you've identified for us? Be able to do during that 2-week time period as well, be able to do like a virtual meeting where, we can present the recommended amendments and the terms that we are looking into, be able to have that Q&A session, as well as even offer a couple of office hours where if people are not able to attend the virtual meeting or they just want to meet with staff one-on-one, to be able to go over those amendments and give us their feedback, be able to give them a couple of opportunities where we can go ahead and make that happen. And so what are your thoughts on this? Is there something that we're missing? Is there something that we should be doing? Recommendations, concerns?
Andrina, what method or how are you choosing the people being surveyed? I'm assuming you're not surveying the entire populace in Georgetown, if you want to explain that.
No, so what our thought was that in very key groups that we want to be able to make sure that we obtain feedback on, it's us when we send out that email, with the announcement, here are the proposed amendments that we're working on, include a link to that survey that definitely has some of those very key questions. And again, it's really just to make sure that we address the issue and that what we're proposing to do makes sense. Is this something that, can you understand what's being proposed? Can you read that language, and can you be able to actually incorporate it as you're designing your project?
Tracy, we do keep an email list of everyone who has ever submitted an application to us. And so most likely to go up to that list. Or if y'all have suggestions, it'll be posted on our website as well. But if y'all have suggestions on specific groups or organizations that we should be targeting, we'd appreciate that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The only things I can think of right off the bat would be perhaps, I don't know if you want to do the entire chamber members or if they really care all the time, but that could be one. And there's also that Development Alliance that I'm not sure how operational they are right now, but that'd probably be your key people as well, aside from the people that submitted.
What is the time frame you would need if one of us comes up with something? What's the time frame you need from us to make your email announcement deadline? If someone comes up with another group or something.
So we definitely, so our intent is to be able to send this out, as I mentioned, at the beginning of January or in January to be able to do so. So if you can certainly let us know, I would say preferably right before the holiday so we can start preparing that. But if, for whatever, if it's after the holidays, like you've taken that break, you've enjoyed, you got your Christmas wish and you're fresh with 2021 and you think of a new group, please let us know. I mean, we'll certainly, try and coordinate and accommodate as much as possible because we do want to make sure that, we get that feedback. And actually, I'll go ahead and jump to it. But, when talking about, our call to action, the homework for you, that was one of the things that we were going to be asking of you, is that can you identify, 2 to 3 people that may be interested in what we're working on, that would like to learn more, that would want to perhaps be able to provide some info. And so let us know who those are so that we can coordinate with them and be able to, seek that feedback from them. Okay. Any other thoughts on our public outreach plan?
Nope, I think you got it.
Okay. All right. So the next steps we talked about. Our next steps is doing public outreach and making sure checking in with PNC and City Council that we're heading in the right direction. And then the next quarter is going to be a busy one for us because we're going to be doing all that public outreach. We're going to be drafting the actual ordinance. We're going to bringing it to you, the ordinance itself, for your feedback and for you to take action on it and provide a recommendation to both PNC and the City Council, and hopefully have amendments that we can adopt by the end of March. And so get ready, because 2021, we're going to start it right by being very busy. And that's it. And that concludes. And again, just remember, please spread the word. Let people know that, this is something that we're working on, to be on the lookout, because we will be working on this in January for seeking public feedback and input. And again, just let us know. Tell us some people, some organizations, some groups that would be interested, that, it would be definitely a value for us to reach out to them. And we'll certainly coordinate that so that we can seek that feedback. And that's it. That concludes the presentation for this item.
And I guess, Andrina, when you do send out the call to action homework, if you could just amend and just add a line item saying, and if you could submit it by this date, it would be helpful to us to remind us.
Absolutely.
And especially with Stuart or somebody who's not there, to make sure that we can, if anybody wants to get information, and they can in a timely manner.
Absolutely. We will certainly do that. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate all of staff's work on this, and I appreciate these meetings. I know we've had some really, really long ones, and I appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into this.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah.
No, thank you. We're in this together. So thank you. Okay.
So do we have any other items? I don't
Well,
think we do on
yes,
the-
ma'am. The next item, we just have one more item on the agenda, which is just update on the overall amendment process.
Okay.
If you may recall, we also had some other items that were given us by City Council that they gave us direction to work on, including the definition of our group homes, looking at that to make sure that it was consistent with all, it was a legal definition consistent with all state and federal regulations. Looking into our street cross-section requirements to make sure that there was no conflict with the fire code, and then doing that phase 2 of the amendments to the sign regulations, where we were going to be looking specifically at digital signage and some other, revisions that we needed to do in terms of portable signs and so forth. And so those still remain in the list. Just with the amount of work that's been going on, they kind of like got pushed back a little bit. So those are items that we may also be bringing you back at the next quarter so that we can begin the discussion on those. But we don't anticipate that they're going to be as big of or extensive as the tree preservation and landscaping. This was definitely our biggest amendment, which is the reason why we tackled this first, to make sure that we were able to complete that. And that's it. That's all I have. Unless you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So then that was item E, right?
Yes, ma'am. That was item.
Okay. So then if there are no other questions, then we can probably, I guess, entertain an amendment or for a motion to adjourn.
So
I'll
moved,
move that we adjourn.
Okay.
and I'll second it.
All right. Then we're adjourned. Thank you so much for all your help.
Thank you.
Fantastic job.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Take care.
You too.